All right, we are live. Good morning, everybody. So what I just said, I apologize. Oh, by the way, I get distracted easy. I was looking at the screen. I was like, man, Microsoft Word, what are you trying to tell me? It's like, get help. And I was like, man, even Microsoft Word knows what's up. So again, next week, we're going to be starting class right at 7:30. This is a hybrid class for no other reason than to try to help as many different learners as we can. Back in the day, this was face-to-face, 7:30, lock the doors. We had work to do. Now, with the streaming, if you're a face-to-face learner, awesome, more face-to-face for you. And if you're a distance learner, maybe you have a family, maybe you have work, you can watch the streams on your own time. Awesome, right? So it's like an educational buffet here. The one thing I ask, though, is because once my train gets rolling, what you will find, and I'm going to introduce Sarah in a few minutes. She's doing her internship with me in biomechanics. I don't read from slides. Like my brain is like a Ringling Brothers. All right, it's a circus. I'm telling stories. I'm giving analogies, and when I get distracted, the circus tent comes crashing down. I forget where I'm at. I got to kind of start over again. Okay, so at 7:30, the door's going to close, and we're going to get to work. And if you're running late, no big deal. Watch the live stream from the computer. Watch the live stream from your phone. Okay, but practice being on time. In addition, it's going to help you. Imagine going for your dream interview, and you're like, oh, I got 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden you hit every train, you hit every red light. So plan to be a little early, so that way you'll never be late. Okay, so that's the mindset. We're not going to ask you to read the syllabus. I want to clarify a couple little things, but I'm not going to read everything. So again, this is a hybrid class for those different learning types. Only exception is exams are face-to-face. I have those dates. Face-to-face exams help both of us. I'm here for clarification. I'm not going to answer a question for you, but sometimes rewording it, I'll reread it in a different way. Oh, okay, now I understand what you asked. Okay. Those dates are set. I'm doing things a little different, and all of the changes that I'm making, again, is to try to move you guys. We have 3 main tests. In the past, my tests have only been 25 questions. The students are like, give us more questions. I'm like, all right, we got 50 minutes. These tests are going to have 35 questions. I'm going to try to just give the meat and potatoes of what concepts I'm trying to teach you. Your 4th test is optional. It's an optional cumulative final. So we all know at the end of the semester, beginning of the semester, we're just like, and then in the semester, we're like, ugh. And so it's tough for all of us, right? So my thought process is give us more time on the content. And then if you have an A after the first 3 tests, because I'm not testing you on anything more, take it and go spend that time on other finals, other stuff. If you have a B and you're happy with that, go spend more time on finals, others. If you have a C and you're like, yay, go do other stuff. If you want to improve your grade, or if you're trying to pass the class, then the optional final, it could be for you. And I explained in the syllabus how that works. If you choose to take the optional cumulative, well, then every test is out 25% instead of 33%. So it's just a different percentage of your grades. But it's just meant to give you another option to help you guys, okay? Let's see. Office hours, guys, I'm here early in the morning, so feel free to come in before class if you have questions, even though I don't have it scheduled. Like, I was here before the janitors. I'm not telling you guys to come here before the janitors, but I'm here early, so if you just 15, 20 minutes want to come early and you have some questions, let's do it. My office hours are usually in the morning because my boys go to a special school for their dyslexia, so they get off earlier than traditional schools, and I pick them up from school. Support materials. Everything you need is on Moodle. Okay, everything you need is on Moodle. You see what I mean? It's all. Come on in, you guys. Everything you need is on Moodle and in the live lecture. The live lecture is meant to clarify, give examples, but I'm going to give you everything that you need for this class. Sarah, how in terms of you taking this class, resources, was it enough, or did you have to go elsewhere for other resources? Or?
I just use the units, and then can find YouTube videos
Okay.
sometimes. You know.
Yeah. Or examples, like some students will be like, can you give us more examples? I'm like, I got a great website for you, www.google.com. You just type in exercises and they got all kinds of them on there, right? So there's always resources for practice. Here's your grade scale. Like I told you guys, I'm going to protect my A's, I'm going to protect my B's. Look at that threshold for a C, 65. That's what most people should make. So try to help you out there. And in addition to try to help you out, to make a C, pass one test of your first three and pass the cumulative final. I'll round you around 30, all right? But Santa Claus is tired of passing more than once a year. All right, here's your exam dates, and this is where I explain about the optional final, right? We already know the date of our final. I also have in there the date of makeups. If you have an excused makeup, it's really important. If you know you're going to miss a test, I need to know you're going to miss a test. If you're sick, let me know. You don't wake up at 7:25 and be like, oh, I'm sick. You're sick, you know you're sick. So if you don't let me know before the test, I'm only going to assume that you had to sleep in. First thing in class, don't assume, right? But if you know you're sick, you know you're going to miss, let me know. That's all I'm asking. Just be a good communicator. If you know, then I need to know. And if you follow that protocol, then I have zero problem letting you retake the test during the last week of class. Set 2 alarms and make sure you have Google access before the exam starts. We'll go over all of that. Is there any questions about why this class is hybrid? Guys, I'm going to be in here every day. Not every day, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is what I do for a living. On the event, there's an emergency or something, I'm not going to cancel class. I'll just post an old video. I'll pre-record a video. So how often did I miss class in year 2? Not often. Right? And I had the Rona, and I couldn't do it, but I still taught from my house. All right. Any questions? Cool. All right. Let me introduce you guys to Sarah Stamey, who's doing her internship with me. This class, she is a great resource. She really understands this material well. And if you just don't mind kind of speaking into the live stream, I know you're shy. But Sarah's going to give you some advice from it. In other words, don't take my word for it. Like you may be like, dude, you're old, you're skewed, your view is right, you've been doing this for a long time. This is Sarah. You just took biomechanics in the spring, and she just took 310 in the fall. So her perspective, one of your peers, advice, general stuff for them to prepare for this class from your perspective.
Yeah, it's still fresh on my brain because I just took all this, but I think that the biggest thing was kind of like letting your ego down before coming into this class. A big thing, if you read the syllabus, is you do not assume, which the main thing is like, do not assume that you know more than like the content that you're about to read. Like a lot of you are probably in sports or you understand a lot of these terms, but you're going to see them and be tested on them in different ways. So kind of just allow yourself to learn the new ways. You might also know like textbook versions of things, and the textbook version is not going to help you analyze motion. Because you're not going to be just tested on like sentences, is what I'm trying to say. You're going to see a picture and have to understand what's going on in that picture. So that's a big thing. Don't try to study the night before. I think a big thing with this class is like if you come to every class, studying is easier, of course, like that's any class, but it's also like trying to understand the motions in real life, like going to the grocery store and watching people, which sounds weird, I know, but it's just like watching people like grab something and like kind of like pausing them and like seeing where their joints are and stuff. Like that's really helpful. Or if you work out, kind of slowing down your motions and really thinking about what you're doing instead of just thinking like, oh, I'm doing a bicep curl. Well, what are you actually doing with your joints?
This is an example of what Sarah's saying. So in a traditional textbook, you're only going to get one form of motion, and it's usually the easiest one. It looks like it's moving, and it is, right? Oh, yay, arm does this, it's this. But in our class, we're going to say, well, that's true, but what the textbooks don't necessarily develop are the different ways your shoulder can also have motion, where it might look like it's moving, but it's not. Remember this example from Monday, right? That's shoulder flexion from left to right. But it's just not traditional. And I'm going to teach you how to look for those clues. I'm going to teach you and literally prove why it has to be shoulder flexion. She's here. She finishes there. If she came back up and didn't move her shoulders at all, she'd be in this new position. She has to. Think of it like this. If she stayed here and she squatted down, her elbows would actually go back. Illusions of motion. So these textbooks, it's not that they're wrong, it's they only give you the 8-set Crayola version of colors. There's a spectrum of colors. There's a lot of colors. So that's my wife. There's a lot of colors. It's not those red, green, and blue.
Would you be okay with us like during the exam, like doing like something like this?
I encourage you. I want you to, like Southwest Airlines, move about the country. You know, you be respectful to your neighbors, but sometimes people will strategize to sit at the ends for the test so that they can get up and try to figure things out. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially on test 2. The first test, a lot of people won't get up, but like by test 2, everybody will be moving.
And that's why I try to set the tone, and Sarah will you know, it is weird. There's some apathy, but you just got to break that ice. And just once we kind of get comfortable with each other, it's really no big deal. It's your grade. Like I want you to try to figure out, you know, what's happening here. Sarah, what in terms of studying, did you find individual studying, small groups, or a combination work not just for you, but just other students that you kind of helped last semester?
I think the most beneficial thing for students last semester was small groups, because if you've only studied your way and you think that you're right, but you know, it just happens to be that you learned it wrong, or you know, you're holding on to something from the past, you're not going to do well on the test. So like having that feedback from groups is very beneficial, especially like if we go over emotion in class and you remember it as one way, but somebody's like, oh, well, didn't you hear that the answer was actually this? That's really important to hear. And then if we do, I don't know if we've talked about that yet, but like maybe study groups often, and like I can give y'all some exercises and stuff to go over.
Her point is you don't have checks and balances when you're by yourself, right?
Right.
Like you could be studying the wrong thing and not have anybody to say, well, I'm not quite sure. And that's where I can be helpful. Like, guys, my cell phone number is on the syllabus. In other words, hey, Dr. Campbell, we're in a study group. Do you mind answering a quick question for us or clarification? I do that because if you're studying, you know, I go to my office hours. It just so happens you're studying during those, I understand, like you're going to study at night, you're going to study in the afternoon, you're going to study when you have time. So if you have a question or a clarification mostly, I don't want you to have to wait till the next day. I want you to have to wait. Like I want to clarify so that you can keep rolling. Does that make sense? Now, if you get me up after 10 p.m., I'm going to. But if you text me after 10, I'm texting you at 4 a.m. Right? Is that fair? All right. Do y'all have any questions? A lot of this stuff is illusions, guys. A lot of this stuff is illusions. Like, you know, you see the clock and you say, time is going forward. Like, let's say we're watching a movie and or a video recorded this and you press play and you'd see this and you say, okay, time's going forward. I press rewind, time's going back. But what happens if I do this? Like it's staying at 9 o'clock. There was no motion there between the joints, right? Or what if I did this? This is really gets me. What if I keep the clock hand fixed and I start moving the clock, right? That happens in the human body. Sometimes we move the clock hand, but sometimes we move the clock. And so that's really what most of me trying to teach you is that we can't just assume anytime we see a certain motion, it has to be this. Ring the bell don't necessarily mean we got to salivate.
Dr. Campbell, can I say something about that?
Please, absolutely.
Another thing with like studying by yourself is you might just get used to seeing pictures of something and be like, oh, well, this is the picture that he gave us in class. This must be the only way I can see something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then like you're gonna want to be around people that are like, well, I found a picture of, you know, shoulder flexion that looks like this. Kind of like he's saying, maybe you're upside down and your shoulder is flexed, but you don't understand that because you're upside down now. So it's like your position in space in the picture is very important because he can flip the picture and you get confused. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to trick you, I'm trying to see if you understand the concept. Guys, has anybody ever heard this cliche that, you know, in school you learn some stuff, but you really don't start learning until you start working, right? Until you start getting into the, you get your hands dirty, because that's when you start applying your knowledge. And that's all I'm trying to get us to do here, is start applying our knowledge so that when you're in the clinic, when you're in graduate school, you've already been playing. It's not fresh to you, okay? A couple other analogies I'll use is in class, I might say, what's 2 + 2? And a lot of students are gonna 2 + 2, and you're gonna study, it's an analogy. But on the test, I'm never gonna ask what's 2 + 2. It's gonna be close, might be what's 2 + 3, 2 + 2 - 1. It's gonna be, it's the same concept, it's just gonna be applied a little differently, okay? So it goes to the point I made Monday, if all you do is study and memorize 1,000 different examples and you don't bother to learn the concept, you better hope that one of those examples is one that I ask you. Just learn the concept. It's a heck of a lot easier. You know, in other words, you don't have to memorize every basic math problem because you know how to solve it. You know how to figure it out. Same stuff. Okay? All right, Sarah, feel free to interject as we get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about, guys, is the difference between rotations and translations. Very, very important, because we live in a straight line world because it's easier for us to understand. Up, down, left, right, front, back, all day. You know, I'm going north, I'm going south, I'm going east, I'm going west. For us, with our bodies, though, we cannot just translate our bodies. From our joints perspective, that's a bad day. Imagine just translating a segment, right? That's, call it dislocation if you just translated something. Our whole bodies can't translate themselves. That would be called, that's correct, magic. That would be magic if we could just stand here and just translate ourselves, okay? And I'm not talking about like, in an elevator, yeah, the elevator is translating me, and there's also wheels and stuff spinning. We rotate things in order to translate things. And our brains are so used to seeing straight line motion that sometimes we don't see and appreciate the spins, the rotation. I'll give you an example. Any MMA fans out there? Right? So when Dustin Poirier is throwing a jab, his hand is going to translate forward. But it's because his elbow is rotating and his shoulder's rotating, right? So we see the end product, but what we don't see is this and this happening at the same time. If the elbow and shoulder moved in sequence, it would actually look pretty silly, but it's the same motions. My major professor at Auburn used to use this example. She would say, imagine if your elbow, she was a black belt in Taekwondo. Imagine if you use your elbow and your shoulder not at the same time. It would look something like this. Or my favorite, use the shoulder first. Right? But when it happens at the same time, we see translation of something, and our attention, like we're chasing butterflies, our attention just goes to hand goes forward. Without seeing, oh, my elbow rotated in a certain way, my shoulder rotated in the other way, they canceled out each other's rotation to translate each other's, to summate each other's translation. Just an example, okay? Translation, straight line world, up, down, left, right, front, back, I have no problem talking about it. But we move with rotations. And that's what we're going to emphasize in this class, is being able to see the spins and communicate the spins and talk about the spins, because we rotate to translate. If I'm going to get across the room, I have to rotate certain things in order for my center of mass to travel linearly. But if it wasn't for my hips and my knees and my ankles doing spinny things, I couldn't translate myself, right? If it wasn't for my knees, my ankles, and my hips doing spinny things, I couldn't go up and down. If it wasn't for my elbows and shoulders doing rotational things, I couldn't go forward and back, okay? We rotate to translate. Now, there's a bunch of words. Being a dyslexic, words are intimidating. But I try to summarize it with just a simple illustration. Who knows what an Etch-a-Sketch is? All right? Does an Etch-a-Sketch, they have knobs that spin, but when you rotate the knob, the little magnet just goes in straight lines. You know, up, down, left, right. But when you combine the knob, then we can make circles. There's no rotation knob. It's combinations of stuff, right? So again, and some of this stuff can be very illusionary. So translation, literally every part of a segment is going up, across, down, across. My arm would be translating. Right? My center of mass could be translating. If joints just translate, though, that would be, in science, we call it a bad day. You do not want to translate bones away from bones. And then here's the combination. This is what, and again, Sarah, interject. The combination of translation, straight line motion, and rotation, spinny motion, is what we call general motion. In other words, that's what's going to happen a majority of the time. You're going to have some combination of general motion. If you had pure rotation in your vehicle, you wouldn't go anywhere. Like that's when your tire gets stuck in the mud. Right? In other words, the tire's spinning, but you're not going anywhere. So it's the combination of the spin and the translation that allows us to have most human movement. Think of it like this. It's asking yourself a question, is something moving? Okay, I could answer that. But is it going anywhere? It's like a merry-go-round. When kids are on a merry-go-round and it's rotating around, is it moving? Sure. Is it going anywhere? No. Pure rotation. That kind of makes sense? Anybody ever play with a hula hoop and you take it and you like spin it, right? And it kind of come back to you? You know? So again, like, is it rotating? Yes. Maybe if I just tossed it up in the air, or I have I wish I had it, but I have guys, there's this thing back in my day, probably never heard of it. It's called a CD. And if I had a CD, and it's an ancient technology, but if I had a CD and I took my pen, I usually have one, and I spun it, is it moving? Yeah, but is it going anywhere? No. Pure rotation. Or if I had a basketball and I spun it on my finger, pure rotation. But is it going anywhere? It's the combination. When I wheel the cart across, whoa, the wheels have general motion, the spin and the translation, right? Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. We have to separate those two things. What is straight line and what is rotary? Because they follow two different masters, okay? Sarah, anything to add on that?
If the cart didn't have wheels, though, it would just be translating because there would be no wheels of rotation. So that's kind of like something to juxtapose.
Like if we slid, to her point, if we shifted the table over, right, that would just be translation.
There's nothing spinning.
Yeah. Now, if I got like, if I didn't get help, like from Microsoft Word, maybe I take the cart and toss it over like a table. Well, that would be rotation, right? About its center of mass. So we're going to try to keep it simple. There's a difference between straight line, translation, and rotation, spin. I have a couple illusions, examples. Again, interject whenever you want. Let's think of a couple common exercises. Lat pull down. That is a linear term applied to a rotational exercise. Meaning my shoulders have to rotate, my elbows have to rotate, right? But lat pull down. Well, how are you going to do another rep unless you let the bar go up? Right? But neither here nor there. When you do a pull up and a lat pull down has the same motions and it's the same muscles. But one has up in the name and the other has down in the name. Doesn't that sound like it's a disaster waiting to happen in our psyche? Yeah. So in other words, we use, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's layman's terms because a lot of people that go in the gym don't have backgrounds in kinesiology, but it messes with our brains. The pull up, when you go up, it's actually because your scapula rotates down and your arms are going down so that you can go up. It's a little weird. Okay? So this is an example of an illusion of translation. My favorite is the running. Fixed ground, movable human. And we could say this person is running, just for the sake of this example, let's say this person is running to the right of Christ. Well, no problem. Running to the right. Well, what if they were on a treadmill and they themselves, their center of mass isn't going anywhere, staying in the middle of the treadmill? The treadmill is actually moving this way. You smell what the rock is cooking? I'm not the rock. Duh. Guys, they're running the same way. Movable person going this way is running the same way as movable ground going that way. Maybe this analogy would help. Back in my day, we used to play these things called board games. I think we were bored. We didn't have Twitter and all those cool things. Open your minds. Hear me out. We're going to be using kin a lot, all right, for examples of functions. But let's say I have a board. We're playing Monopoly or something. And I roll the dice, and it says, go forward. Now, why I'm doing this is because we're looking at it from the top. Does that make sense? We're doing a top view. I roll the dice, and it says, go forward 3 spaces. 99.9999999% of the time, you're going to have a movable piece about a fixed board, and you're going to go forward 3 spaces. And let's say we call that motion forward moving. What I'm trying to get you to see is that I can still have forward moving by moving something to the back. Ken, go forward 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. Didn't Ken get to the same place? Whether or not we did 1, 2, 3 got me to the same place as if we did 1, 2, 3. And that's what joint motions are. It's not about what's moving clockwise, counterclockwise, forward, back. It's where was the joint at? Where did it end up? And how did it have to move to get there? Does that make sense? It didn't matter that the board moved back. He still went forward relative to the board game. That's the biggest illusions of motion, is when you see things or are taught things, high school, freshman life, but you only see it from the perspective of kin moving about the board. And therefore, that's all you think can happen. But in human motion, the board can move about kin. The bigger piece can move about the smaller piece. In engineering, this is why engineers don't like biomechanics. For engineers, this little green knob is always going to move about the bigger faucet. But in our world, we can move the faucet about the knob. And the same motion is going to look different. I'll give you an example. There's the example right there. Lefty loosey, righty tighty, right? You know why that holds? Because a majority of the time, most every time, we're going to open up a bottle or open up something by moving the small piece about the big piece. So it works. But you know what I can also do? If I wanted to be stubborn, I can open up this cleaner, not by rotating the bottle lefty. If I spin it to the left, it's actually going to tighten. I'd actually want to spin the bottle to the right. They have to be in opposition. Guys, if they both spun the same way, you'd never open them. Does that make sense? So again, we get used to the door always moves about the wall. The cap always moves about the bottle. But in the human body, I can move the small piece about the big piece, but I can also move the big piece about the small piece, and it's going to mess with your minds. And I'm your counselor. Let me give you an example. And again, Sarah, interject when you want. I'm going to teach you that this to there, left hip external rotation, the kind you may have seen in a book, of the kind you may have seen in class. Okay, that was all part of the class because we're going to segue into gravity. And man, I wasted my body. All right, guys, back on the train. Here to there is the exact same as here to there. The same motion. Here to there is the exact same motion at my hip as from here to there. And I'm going to teach you how to see it. I'm going to teach you how to prove it. I see my toes. When I externally rotate, my toes are lateral to my belly button. So instead of moving my toes lateral to my belly button, I'm going to just move my belly button to make my toes lateral to the belly button. You see it? It's the same position. Watch, I'm going to do a little magic. It's the same thing. Here's another way to look at it. If I flex my shoulder and I leave home, anatomical position is going to be home. If I flex and I leave home, wouldn't I have to extend to go back home in this analogy? So if I start in anatomical position and I externally rotate, I say, okay, that's cool. How do I get back home? Well, I have to internally rotate to go back home. Start. Finish. I'm not quite sure what happened. It was one of those tricky illusions. Well, where am I at? How would I have to move to go back home? Wouldn't I have to internally rotate to go back home? So that tells me I had to externally rotate when I left. This to there is the same as that to that, but it's two different spins. It looks different, but it's the same motion. Opening your bottle can happen by moving the cap one way or the bottle the other way. The motion is open. Closing could be moving the cap this way or the bottle the other way. The motion is closing. Make sense? Flexion can happen. I'll use ulnar deviation. Ulnar deviation can happen by moving the cap about the bottle, but it could also happen by moving the bottle about the cap. From there to there is the same change as from there to there. Good? Sorry, did I stain you?
No.
Okay. That's going to leave a stain. Any questions so far? And look at this amazing illustration that I did. Look at that. That's I'm so bad. Here's another example, guys. And I think, and Sarah, you'll notice, I'm trying to emphasize these illusions early in class because it almost seems like in the past, students that didn't embrace these illusions just never were able to catch up.
Yes.
So I'm really trying to emphasize, I'm planting the seed for our lectures. Again, clock example. The small hand will always rotate about the clock. But in the human body, we can rotate the clock about the clock hand. And we get the same exact motion. We get the same exact change. Now, it's going to start to make more sense when we get into global and local references and perspectives. In other words, yes, they have a different room spin, but in terms of the spin of the clock, that's the exact same change. We went from 6 to 9. It didn't matter that in one, we took the hand to go from 6 to 9, and the other, we literally took the 9 to go to the clock hand. Does that make sense? This is the exact same motion as this, because it gets me to the same place. Cool? Any questions so far? It's almost Halloween season. Anybody ever see David Pumpkins from Saturday Night Live? Any questions? All right, YouTube it, pardon. All right, I think this is a very commonly missed question on the test. And again, guys, don't get overwhelmed. I'm almost kind of like giving you the end and then we're going to work our way to it. Almost like if a movie kind of teases the end and then you got to work your way to the story. From start position to finish of the shoulders. Shoulder, bilateral shoulder extension. I'm not asking you to learn it right now. I'm just giving you an example. That motion change of the shoulder on the top picture is the exact same motion change of the shoulder on this bottom picture. Here's one way to look at it. You see this person up here, arms are out in front, dumbbells are out in front on the start. If you tilt your head, you ever did the tilt? Go left to your left shoulder, and you tell me those dumbbells aren't in front of him in the exact same way as the top picture. From the shoulder's perspective. And what I'm going to teach you, and Sarah's going to help me develop, is that when we're analyzing motion, filter out the distractions. Now, if I'm asking you about the right wrist, it doesn't matter what this side is doing. You lock in on what you're analyzing. And it's going to make you a better personal trainer. It's going to make you a better athletic trainer. It's going to make you a better therapist. Because a lot of times, human motion is filled with distractions. But it's actually very simple when we can filter out those distractions. Does everybody see how our start position of our shoulders? Now, I'm not disrespecting the hips. I'm just not talking about the hips yet. We'll get to the hips when we get to the hips. One of your commandments, we analyze motion joint by joint. Now I want to have a shoulder conversation. So the fact that I want to have a shoulder conversation means that it doesn't matter what else in it. Like, anybody else have siblings? Somebody have siblings? When I would be like, but mom, Jason, my brother, it doesn't matter what Jason did. We're talking about you. Dang, all right. We're not disrespecting other joints. We just have to analyze motion joint by joint, and I want to have a shoulder conversation. The shoulders start in the exact same position. They're both flexed. True? Now, look at the end position, the second picture, left to right. They're back in anatomical. So how do you go from being flexed to going back home? You have to have extension. How do you go from being flexed to going back home? You have to have extension. If he stayed flexed, whoa, 47-year-old balance issues. If he stayed flexed, his arms would be here. If he stayed in the same shoulder position. But it doesn't look like it's moving because the clock hand stayed in the same place from the room's perspective. So it doesn't look like the clock was moving. But the clock did move. Not traditionally, like in the top picture. Traditional clock, hey, we got that. We learned that in KNES 101. Guys, this is the major leagues. It's like you build your way up the minors, right? We're not using T's anymore. This is live pitching, and you have to adjust. What I'm trying to show you is that you've had this. Now Campbell's going to show you this and how they're the same. That's cool. That's powerful. I have so many students say, Dr. Campbell, we're in PT school, OT school, DO school, and we're teaching the other students how the human body works. I'm like, that's awesome. More time you get to spend on other stuff, or more time to have fun. Guys, before you can have fun playing the game, you got to know the rules of the game. You got to know the rules of the game. Once you know the rules of the game, then you can have fun playing the game and develop strategies. That's fun. Learn. I don't know if it was like this for you guys in PE, but the worst part of PE was when we had to go over all the rules. Just play. But before you play, you got to kind of know the rules, right? All right. Does anybody have a question about what I'm trying to? And do you like this? This was very commonly missed. Do you have anything to interject?
Is it too early to talk about the hips and how
Do
you
it.
might think one is moving and
Do it.
So, like, kind of like going off of earlier, you might think, kind of like what he's trying to say is, you see right leg go up and then right leg go down. So if you just look at this picture, he's asking about the shoulders, right? But you're focused on the main thing that you saw move. So that's what you're going to want to jump to answer on. Okay, so that's one thing. But also going off of that, just because you see the leg move up does not mean that it's left anatomical position. So it is not the right leg, that left anatomical, it's actually your left leg. Even though it's staying put and fixed on the ground, you're moving about this, and that will get missed on the test.
What
So
a
many people.
What a great point. If I was Harry Potter, right? That'd be so fun. If I did this and a cast went on Sarah's leg, she couldn't move her hip if she tried. You could still do that motion.
With this leg.
Because her leg stayed in the same position. That's like saying if I casted my arm, I could still make it go up by leaning my trunk to the left, right? It doesn't mean I had to move it because of my shoulder. So that's her point. And that's our point. That if you were taught hip flexion is leg go forward, hip extension is leg go back. They're like cavemen, leg go back, leg go forward. Well, what happens when leg go back and there's no extension? You see what I'm trying to get at? Leg go back, no motion. Leg go forward, no motion. So we can't assume. We cannot assume. But again, we're going to teach you these things. We're just kind of we're planting some seeds so that hopefully you listen and apply what I'm trying to teach you. Because I think one of the problems in the past is, again, I had so many students after the class was over, they were like, man, I wish I'd have had more of an open mind in the first few weeks. I just thought I knew this stuff worked. And Sarah can attest, I'm never going to explain something where I don't have justification, I don't have proof, I don't say, does everybody understand? Someone's like, I don't understand. Okay, no problem. Try this analogy. Okay, look at it like this. Okay, let's get up. Let's do it. See if okay, now I get it. And one more thing, and then we have women in kinesiology is going to invite you. Guys, the easy stuff is the peripheral. But Sarah can attest, once we get into the stuff that's hidden by clothing, the pelvic girdle rotations and the trunk stuff and the hip. Now, some of you are going to just be like, feed me more. This is really fun. And I want it to be fun for everybody. But to enjoy when things get tougher and more exciting and fun, we've got to plant those seeds of understanding so that we can play with more challenging levels of movement analysis. Okay? Anything else there before I'll let Margaret come in? All right. Come on in. Good morning. Oh, we got tea. All right.
Good?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Kristen Landry, and I'm the Vice President of Women in Kinesiology.
And I'm Margaret Higginbotham. WICS is Women in Kinesiology Society, and I'm the president. WICS is an organization that supports community and team building within the School of Kinesiology. We also have a fundraiser called So Unstoppable, which aids in women's fight with cancer. Some of our goals include professional development, professional opportunities, mentorship, and in general, just discussing any issues regarding women in healthcare. Our meetings will have guest speakers. We'll also have a panel of professionals like PTs, OTs, chiropractors, and PAs.
Assistants, yeah.
You can tell about our first meeting.
Our first meeting is September 12th at 6:30 in room
157B.
It's also open
To all genders,
right?
yes,
Absolutely.
not just women. As long as you're a kinesiology major or minor, you are free to join. We have a lot of fun things planned. You can scan the QR code over here to join our group meet. And we also have an Instagram at ul.wix, so you can stay tuned to any fun stuff happening.
Who's your faculty advisor? Hey!
And Miss Anna also helps with our fundraiser.
Absolutely.
She's another one. All right.
Any questions? Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all for coming. Y'all are going to be available though.
Yeah.
Somebody's shy and wants to ask you some questions. All right, guys, we are done for the day. We will see y'all Friday. I'm going to go get some more water.